Check, check. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon. Notice of public meeting of the City Commission of the City of Brownsville pursuant to Chapter 551, Title 5 of the Texas Government Code. The Texas Open Meetings Act notice is hereby given that the City Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, in accordance with Article 5, Section 12 of the Charter of said city, will convene a regular meeting on December the 13th, 2022 at 5 p.m. in the City Commission chambers located on the second floor of the Brownsville City Hall, Old Federal Building located at 1001 East Elizabeth Street, Brownsville, Cameron County, Texas. Members of the public who submitted a public comment form will be permitted to offer public comments as provided by the agenda and as permitted by the presiding officer during the meeting. A recording of the meeting will be made and will be available to the public in accordance with the Opens Meetings Act. Mayor, it is now 5:05 in the afternoon. You may now call the meeting to order.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. We now call the meeting to order.
If everyone would please stand for the invocation.
And please remain standing after the prayer for the pledge. So let's pray. Father God, we thank you for your love, your grace, and your mercy. We thank you for the many blessings we have here in the city of Brownsville. Lord, we thank you for your creation. We thank you for your word, for your law. Help us to have the humility to not try to remake it according to our desires, but to accept what you have created us to be. Lord, I thank you for our mayor, our city commissioners here today. I ask you to lead and guide them according to your will, according to your plans. Give us divine wisdom and direction, each one of us, anyone that speaks here today. Lord, I ask you to continue to give Brownsville favor in Austin and in Washington, and help us to do everything for the very best for the city of Brownsville. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. And now we'll have a short moment of silence where we can all add our prayers to what has already been spoken. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
Do the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Texas flag, pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God.
Next agenda item is the public comment period. We did not have anyone submit a public comment, so we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the work session number 1, discussion related to the creation of Chapter 380 Incentives Program for residential and commercial projects, included but not limited to residential rehab and commercial expansion projects, by City Attorney's Office.
Hello, Mayor and Commission. This will be your very brief presentation regarding the Chapter 380 program. As many of y'all know, it is a very broad economic development tool. It allows for various grants, loans, for industrial, commercial, and retail projects. Cities must adopt a program, and there are limitations involved. We have to ensure that a public purpose is served. We can only use current funds, and we, of course, have to comply with whatever city charter or local policies we have adopted. Next slide. This is just a quick run through of Brownsville's current incentives program. The main objectives, of course, are outlined through 1 through 6. Develop and diversify the local economy, develop and promote different clusters within the industries, create new and high quality jobs. And there is an application process. Applicants apply, they have to set some information. Staff evaluates the applications for the incentives, and they make a recommendation to you all. And then you guys would then approve or deny or modify the economic incentives. And it is in the form of a written agreement that you all would approve. Next slide. And so these are some of the requirements that staff look at to evaluate the particular project that might be coming forward, whether the company has enough financial strength and stability, what's the fiscal and economic impact to the city, market conditions, and of course, the environmental impact of the particular business. Next slide. And in Brownsville, we have the form of the incentives could be sales tax rebates, could be tax abatement, permit fee waivers, or fast tracking the building permits. And so we have those particular incentives already in place. Next slide. The next few slides will kind of go over briefly what other cities have in place as far as a waiver program for permits and other city fees. McAllen, besides having a 380 program for retail, commercial, and industrial, they also have this Imagine Tomorrow program, which provides incentives for new construction in the form of waivers. This one, I believe, is citywide within the city of McAllen. And if the city of Brownsville were to do something similar, I would recommend that we do it in the form of a neighborhood empowerment zone, where you select a particular area within the city that this particular program would help spur economic development, or more so, but getting rid of substandard buildings and improving buildings that are falling apart, if you will. Next slide. And then the next few cities are just examples of, you go from a very high technical drafting, which McAllen had, to some simple. The city manager is authorized to waive fees. And so City of Murphy has this, where they have it in their fee schedule, where the city manager is authorized to waive fees within the fee schedule if it's in the best interest of the city. Next slide. City of Burnett, they leave it to their governing body by resolution, where they provide the waivers and staff brings forward those recommendations. We recommend these waivers, and then their city council, which is their commission, decide on those waivers. And then the final slide. And then Brian does a little bit of having a simple, but with some criteria, where they do waive some building permit fees and tap fees, and it really depends on the particular project. Next slide. I think that might be it. That's it, okay. Yeah, so we wanted to provide you, I think Mr. Flores wanted to provide you all a brief run through of what the Chapter 380 program is within the city right now. And there was some discussions about maybe having, not everything has to be done through a 380 agreement. There can be some waivers, but it has to be done either through a resolution or ordinance, where you all, if it's going to be city manager, it would be part of the fee schedule where you authorize her, or it can be in resolution if the commission is going to reserve that power for themselves. And so we wanted to give that rundown. If there's interest in having a neighborhood program like 380, but instead of for retail, industrial, or commercial, we would recommend a neighborhood empowerment zone for those particular neighborhoods that it would benefit. So, any questions?
Do we have any questions from the commission? All right, thanks.
All right, thank you.
Next, we have consent agenda items 1 through 5.
Do we have any motions?
I'll make the motion to approve, Mayor.
We have a
Second.
motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
Next, we have the public hearings. Number 1, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2022-032 to rezone from agricultural to commercial corridor for Lot 11, Block 1, Los Ranchitos subdivision, Section 1, Cameron County, Texas, located at 23832 West US Highway 281, San Benito, Texas, 78586, as shown in Exhibit A, which is in District 4, Planning and Redevelopment Department.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Commissioners. So this request is, well, the proposed use is an import-export office. The current zoning is agricultural. The request is to change the zoning to commercial corridor, and this property is fronting US Highway 281. This is the buffer map. There were 200 mailouts, 22 mailouts and 0 written opposition. And as you can see, what predominates in the area is agriculture zoning. The ETJ is to the north and the border with Mexico is to the south. This is a street view. Another aerial view. And it's important to point out, even though there seems to be a lot of businesses operating, none of these have a CO. They've been operating before they were annexed into the city, which was back in 2006. So they existed when they were still in county jurisdiction, and they've continued to do so since. And so P&Z did recommend the approval to rezone from agricultural to commercial corridor. Any questions?
You said this was annexed into the city in 2006?
Yes.
Okay, because I saw that the address still shows San Benito.
Well, the postal code is San Benito.
Okay. All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak on this item? I do have a motion to close.
So moved.
We have a motion to close. Is there a second? Motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right, do we have any motions on the item?
Martin, can I just ask you?
Yes, ma'am.
Then what would be the use prescribed by the comprehensive plan?
Well, based on this area or based on the future land use plan, it does say it's mostly agricultural use, or if it's going to be any residences, it's going to be single-family residences on large lots. But it doesn't really intend for businesses of this type.
It's surrounded by other businesses that are doing the same thing?
Very similar, but just to reiterate, they do not have COs.
Right, I saw that in the packet. So then is there a plan to bring these into compliance, or what is the planning department plan to do about it?
We cannot go, let's say, after these businesses unless there is a complaint. We only act by, again, complaint. If we receive a complaint from a neighbor, then we'll send a code enforcement officer and we'll go from there. But we cannot just go and knock on the door and say, you have to comply with current rules.
Okay, do we have any motions on the item?
I'll
I
make
move
the-
to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve in a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes.
Public hearing number 2, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2022-033 to rezone from residential suburban to residential transition for Lot 26, Block 1, Portway Acres subdivision, Cameron County, Texas, located at 75 Cena Drive, Brownsville, Texas, as shown in Exhibit A in District 2.
So the intended use for this property is for apartments. It is fronting Xena Drive, currently zoned residential suburban, which only allows duplexes or one duplex on the property. They do need the residential transition to be able to put the multiple units. I believe it will be 6. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 33 mailouts and 0 written opposition. And as you can see to the north and the south, directly abutting the property, there is already multifamily use. This is a zoning map. It's a mixture of residential suburban and residential transition. There's also commercial corridor and regional center to the north, as well as light industrial. This is a street view. This is a street view. Aerial view. And PNZ did recommend the approval to rezone from residential suburban to residential transition.
Okay. Do you have any questions from the commission? All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody here on this item?
I'll move to close it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, do we have any motions on the
I'll
item?
move
I'll
to approve.
second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Public hearing number 3, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2022-034-S to grant a specific use permit to allow used truck sales for Lot 2, Block 1, Ernesto Cortez subdivision, Cameron County, Texas, located at 270 FM 511, Brownsville, Texas, as shown in Exhibit A, District 3.
So the proposed use for this property is used truck sales. Very similar to used car lots, it does require a specific use permit in a minimum zoning of regional center. However, this property already has a regional center zoning, so it just has a specific use permit. The property is fronting FM 511. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 9 mailouts and 0 written opposition. And as you can see, there is commercial business to either side of it. And just to point out, the business itself has been operating for many years. They're just trying to bring it into compliance. This is the zoning map. The zoning that predominates is regional center. There's also commercial corridor, residential transition, and residential estate. This is a street view on Bernadette Road. And PNZ did recommend approval to grant the specific use permit to allow the used truck sales.
Okay, do you have any questions from the commission?
So, I'll move to close public hearing.
Well,
We haven't
need
opened
to-
it yet.
Yeah. This is a public hearing. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak on this item? All right,
I'll move.
Second.
we have a motion to close and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
I'll move to approve. Sorry.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
Public hearing number 4, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2022-035-PD to establish a planned development district for a 25.83 acre tract of land out of a 315.57 acre tract of land out of shares 1 and 17, Espiritu Santo Grant, Cameron County, Texas, located at 4551 U.S. Military Highway, Brownsville, Texas, as shown in Exhibit A, District 4.
So to provide a little bit of background, if you recall, last week we did establish a PD for 4 acres fronting U.S. Military Highway 281. And it was the property fronting Riverbend Country Club. And so they decided to do the second phase for this development, get the PD established. And again, it will be for the purpose of establishing development-specific setbacks, lot sizes, and reduced private right-of-way as approved by corresponding departments. And it will be a multi-use development consisting of single-family residential, townhomes, multifamily, resort amenities, and commercial use. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 21 mailouts and no opposition. The zoning that predominates is residential single family. There is agriculture to the north and the ETJ. This is a street view. Apologize. So PNZ did recommend the approval to establish a planned development district for this property.
All right, do we have any questions or comments from the commission? This is a public hearing. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak on this item?
I'll move to close, Mayor.
We have a motion to close?
Second.
Motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes. Now, do we have a motion on the item?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Public hearing number 5, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2022-907 PD to remove a planned development district for approximate 23.417 acres out of lots 1, 2, 3, and 10, block 308, El Jardín, re-subdivision, Cameron County, Texas, located at 7364 Boca Chica Boulevard, Brownsville, Texas, as shown in Exhibit A, District Number 2.
So again, to provide some background, this PD was originally established by an ordinance that was approved back in April 5th of this year. It was for a property that was intended to be a residential development for Astra Development. And so this is a city-initiated case that's going to be reverting back the property to its original property rights. So we will be removing the planned development district, and the base zoning will remain the same as residential estate and regional center. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 30 mailouts and 0 written opposition. And this is a PD that was established, what's highlighted in blue. There is light industrial to the west, residential estate to the south, and regional center to the east. This is a street view. The narrow view. And P&Z did recommend the approval to remove the planned development district that was established by said ordinance.
All right, do we have any questions or comments?
There's a new requirement, right, that developers have to submit plans for the whole property now ahead of time, like a master plan? Is that is it hard now for people to do that? Or why are they coming back to change it?
That is correct. And in this case, it's being reverted by the city because the project did not materialize. But for a PD, you are correct. They're required to submit something similar to a master plan, so we can determine what's going to be the layout of the development and what uses are going to be established.
And so I'm just wondering if you've started to see, when you have a master plan for a large acreage and then they change their mind halfway through, are we going to have these types of hearings to revert back or no?
Well, a master plan is different because a master plan is specifically for the subdivision process. And in a master plan, we use it to establish, let's say, roadways, street names, easements. And that one we would have to amend if there's going to be a significant change, because the construction of the development is going to be based on that. But for the PD, it's generalized enough to where they don't have to come back, even if they're going to change, let's say, a particular layout of the uses.
Okay,
The
because this
use,
is
but
just
not-
involving rezoning.
Right, this is just zoning.
Mr. Vasquez?
In this particular case, it was the developer who's decided to not move forward with the project, and so the developer did not complete the transaction to take ownership of the property. So we're just going back to the previous zone.
Okay.
And the previous change was done with the consent of the actual owner of the property, right? Okay. This is a public hearing. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak on this item? All right, do we have a motion to close?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, do we have a motion on the item?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Public hearing number 6, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 2022-235.103 to amend the Unified Development Code, Article 4, zoning regulations to allow the sales of used motor vehicles and dealing with related matters as shown in Exhibit A.
So this amendment is being proposed due to the increase or the constant desire to establish used car lots. And so just to compare what used to exist prior to the UDC and now that the UDC has been adopted. Before, car lots were basically allowed by right in commercial zoning. When the UDC came, there were provisions that were included to make it a little bit more difficult for these uses to be established, for new ones to be established. It's meant to encourage the use of existing properties for establishing the used car lot use. So the requirements that are established by the UDC is that the minimum zoning that's required is regional center with a specific use permit. And compliance with residential adjacency provisions are established, organized parking of inventory, adequate space for traffic flow, storage of inventory within the property, unloading of the inventory within the property, and all type of work must be done within enclosed areas. And the masonry wall must also be provided along residential uses. And so the intention behind these provisions is to prevent situations such as this where single-family homes are basically engulfed by this type of use. So as you can see in all these pictures, there is a single-family home. And for example, the one on the bottom left-hand corner, it has a car lot on both sides. And these are the known areas where car lots exist in the city. So this would be near the corner of International and the Expressway, over by 12th Street and the Expressway, and also by 14th Street. And as you can see, these car lots are getting closer and closer to single-family neighborhoods. So the purpose of this amendment is to expand the permissibility of the used motor vehicle sales into other commercial districts. So recently, the zoning changes that have been approved are going from commercial corridor to regional center. So we would be expanding this use into commercial corridor, light industrial, and traditional neighborhood because we're targeting, for example, thoroughfares like Southmost, where this zoning predominates. So to protect the historic areas, we would just prohibit this use along primary and secondary arterials that intersect the historic overlay. And so we would also be removing additional restrictions such as requiring the specific use permit, requiring the fencing and screening, and also removing the residential adjacency provisions for this use.
So what does that mean? Sorry. So if you have like that house that's sandwiched between two used car lots, what would that do for that residence?
Well, the use would just be allowed next to the residence because the residential adjacency provisions basically say you have to have that additional screening of a masonry wall. And the structure has to be a minimum of 40 feet from the property line that abuts the single family use. In this case, we would eliminate that requirement to basically prevent future zoning cases such as the ones that have been approved. And just to add a little bit of data to that comment, out of the 8 that have been presented to the commission since the UDC was adopted, all of them have been approved. So just to be more flexible with development and those applicants that wish to establish this type of business, is just so that they won't have to go through the process. And that way they can just establish their business by right.
And how would you screen whether, or how would you determine whether or not there's any opposition? Let's say a neighbor actually wants to oppose. And under this process, it just is an automatic? So the neighbor wouldn't be able to oppose?
That's correct, because there wouldn't be a zoning change.
Yeah. I'm not sure how it necessarily helps, other than the time element.
Well, it's Staff is proposing the amendment based on, like I said, the approvals. But we would like to uphold the provisions that are established.
So Mayor, before we started the adoption of the UDC, your regulations that you had in place were relatively flexible. You could open up a used car lot in about any commercial zone, and there were not any requirements for screening or protecting neighbors. When Freeze and Nichols worked on the UDC, the pendulum kind of swung the other way, and we went to the extreme where new used car lots had to be in regional corridor zoning district, which is in a very limited number of locations within the city on the highway where they intersect the major arterials. So there were no places for new used car lots, so people started applying for rezonings and taking the regional corridor zone, which was designed for the highways, and you started putting it on the minor arterial roads down in Southmost. And so that's happened 8 times now since the adoption of the code. So we see that as the code not properly adjusting for regulating the used car lots. And so given what the commission has expressed to us individually, some concerns about the cost of the masonry fences for the new businesses that are establishing, that would be removed under this proposed ordinance, not requiring them to go through an SUP process. It would be a use that's just permitted in our commercial districts, used like it was before the UDC was adopted. They would still be allowed to come in and get a building permit. They're still required to have an office building and pave their parking lot. But we're taking out some of those protections that are provided to properties where you may have a residence abut that proposed parking lot in a commercial district. So with that, just based on again, on the last 8 approvals of the car lot applications, this will align the code more with the actions that the commission has taken over the last year.
Here's a couple concerns I have. First, I don't think the 8 approvals have been unanimous. And I know that some of them have been contested, and there's been some opposition from neighbors in the past. And I know that the commission has expressed concerns. I know Commissioner De Los Santos on a couple occasions has expressed concerns about the block fence. And I know that Commissioner Galansky had some issues as well, Commissioner Tetro. So it hasn't been unanimous. And then also, I don't really want to set up this for future commissions that may have opposition or may be willing to vote against some of these things. So for me, I personally don't really favor this, but I'm only one. Thanks. But I understand the rationale, certainly.
Well, who would enforce it though? My biggest complaint that I get and that I see is, one, does it include Southmost, especially between like 14th Street and say Tulipan? Because you've got a lot of businesses there. And so you have them, even on 14th Street, like close to the frontage road, they start parking in underneath the overpass in the TxDOT right of way, or they just start parking on the sidewalks and stuff, and they make it hard for the neighbors then who have to pull out. I've also seen, and I sent the picture to John, where they have the towing trailer and they park it in the middle of Southmost as it's getting dark. And if someone doesn't see it because it's not lit up and they just delivered a load of used cars and it's just right there in the middle, at any moment it could create a car accident. So it's who's going to enforce all those rules, because those are the real safety hazards.
The loading and the unloading is still regulated by the police department as a traffic violation. But the land use issue, I think, is that we have relatively small lots along Southmost, and so they're taking up most of the space parking vehicles, so their business activity spills over into the right of way. And again, that's one of the reasons why the code amendment was trying to push the used car lots to the regional corridor or regional centers where there's more space available to conduct that type of business. But again, because we've had these 8 cases come through, we see that there's a problem in administering the code when there's a desire on the part of the commission to permit those car lots in those smaller lots.
And then, well, so it says here that you would, or the language would say that all the cars have to be parked on this, I think a paved surface.
Yeah.
So if they have an excess supply and then, and they start parking like on the street, who who would enforce that? And I guess that's PD, but
Traffic. They're parking them in the right of way, it would be PD. It'd be a traffic violation.
in that respect, I think I'm with Trey because, you're gonna make it a whole lot easier. Like, it's, you're opening the floodgates.
On removing the residential adjacency provisions, and I know I'm usually opposed to the wall having to be brick or masonry. When this says those shall no longer apply,
The proposal is that it would no,
the masonry specifically or a privacy fence?
No, the masonry specifically.
Okay.
Right, because it would just leave the base requirement, which is for example, a wind fence.
Say that one more time?
For example, wind fence, it would just leave that base
a wooden
requirement.
fence.
A wooden fence, okay.
Right.
Yeah, so it would still be a privacy fence requirement.
Right.
See, I'm with Trey and Earth on this, and I am against the masonry on a lot of these, especially the one on Boca Chica, which I think we've spoken about. They don't have residents to the left, they don't have residents to the right, and they don't have it to the back. Yet we're still trying to enforce this. So that's the one that really bothers me. And this is not next to a home, it's nowhere near homes. There's I think it's like a drainage ditch to the right. There's a used car to the left and to the back. So those are the ones that I think we should be pulling out, not necessarily the ones that live. I mean, if I were to have a used car next to my house, of course I'd love for a fence to be put up there. But I think we should not get rid of something like this, but we should be a lot more lenient on the one I'm talking about. I'm pretty sure you all know which one it is, the one on Boca Chica, which is way out there. There's used cars all around it. So it's a little different.
Right,
We can certainly draft the, like to maintain. Really is up to Brian again to respond to prove required that they go. Code was not.
And I appreciate what you're trying to do because you're trying to make it easier for somebody to open a business. And I very much respect and appreciate that the city is now taking that stance. But my concern is, again, this is a very specific type of business that does tend to encroach on whatever is next to it. We have made these exceptions, as Commissioner Cardenas was saying on Boca Chica, and every time I drive by, I always see some type of violation, somebody, and maybe not by the business, but somebody parking in a very dangerous spot, whatnot. So I am absolutely for making it easier to open a business, whether it be anything here in Brownsville, but I really appreciate that the ordinance is very strong and that it bumps up to the commission to be seen on a case-by-case basis because to remove this might put somebody that is a home next to one at a disadvantage. And I do like, even though they disagree with the masonry, if that was next to me, I would like to see a brick fence where I don't have to see that or hear cars turning on all the time and being worked on, things like that. So I appreciate the ordinance, and I also appreciate you bringing this to us to try and make it easier to open a business in Brownsville.
Okay, well, if we could, Mayor, perhaps table the item and we'll bring it back and revise with the feedback that we've received here tonight, and we'll revise the document and give the commission another look at it, see which direction you'd like to take.
And
Thanks.
or for example, remember recently, I had one that was on, southmost between 14th and International, that it used to be a restaurant. Right next door is residential. And right after that. So situations like that is where we do need something like this.
Hello, hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I share the concerns that were already expressed and I would motion to table.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to table. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Was this a public hearing, Mayor?
No.
Okay.
Oh, wait, it is.
It is a
Oh.
public
I
hearing.
apologize.
Then
Thank
withdraw
you for
all of
pointing
that.
that
Do
out.
that first.
This is a public hearing. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak on this item? All right, can we get a motion to close?
Move to close.
Second?
We have a
Second.
motion and a second to close. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Mo-
All right. And then
Motion to
Commissioner-
table.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to table. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks for pointing that out.
Absolutely.
Just to let city management know, I do appreciate that our staff is keeping an eye and a pulse on what is being and isn't working in our ordinance codes.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Next, we have items for individual consideration. Number one, consideration and action to incorporate police vehicles into the master lease agreement with Enterprise Fleet Management in a not to exceed first year amount of $1,508,430.12 as budgeted, internal services.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. I'm back here again before you with this item. We were hoping that we would have this settled and our vehicles would already be on site, but unfortunately, the supply chain restraints and market availabilities had other plans for us. So we're back here with the entire plan again. So we presented this back in May for the public safety fleet vehicles, 199 vehicles over a 10-year period, and we were going to lease or add this program to the master lease agreement that we had through Enterprise. Unfortunately, Ford canceled all of the orders that we had and said that we may have the opportunity to order for 2023, but probably at a significant price increase. And so we basically had to go back to the drawing board with Enterprise and relook at all of our options, all of our pricing models, vehicle types. We met back with both chiefs to make sure that we were going to get exactly what was needed for the city and not shortchange anybody, but still stay within our budgetary constraints. So we are coming back here. We do have some changes, and I'll explain what those changes are in a bit. Our objectives have not changed. We do want to lower the age of the public safety fleet. Currently, 46% of the public safety fleet is over 10 years old. We do want to reduce our maintenance costs. We're getting in brand new vehicles over a 4-year period, so that's going to definitely reduce the maintenance costs that we have, especially over vehicles that are 10 years old. And we will go through the 10-year process. We'll have 2 iterations of these vehicles that are coming in. And then we want to maintain a manageable vehicle budget that we have. So dedicating or creating a fleet budget for this program, a fleet fund, would help pay for this. And we get this through the selling of the vehicles that we have. We put that equity back into that fund and we help fund this program. So what we have here is our fleet planning analysis. This is very similar to what we showed you the last time. This is only for proposed and what Enterprise had proposed to us. The difference being, one of the biggest difference being, we are looking at 4 years versus 2 years. And so you can kind of see that. This is the fleet management quote that was provided by Enterprise. We are looking at 108 vehicles on the first year, 84 police department vehicles, and 24 fire department vehicles. So these are the list of the vehicles with the prices. We are looking at a total of $1.5 million as stated in the agenda item. So again, we're looking at building on the city's light fleet replacement program, which was started in 2019 for the light fleet, the white fleet for most of the departments. It is a 5-year, really 2 iterations, so it'd be 10 years, but a 5-year open-ended lease, equity lease for fire and patrol. 179 total vehicles, 24 for fire, 155 for police. 1.5 million for the first year. And as far as maintenance costs over the 10-year program, we're looking at an estimated $400,000 in savings on maintenance costs. So what are the difference? I've already mentioned that it's a 4-year replacement turnover versus 2 years. We're also looking at a total of 179 vehicles versus 199. And again, that's getting back with both the police chiefs and or both police and fire chief into seeing what exactly do we absolutely need to have on the roads to make sure that we're not shortchanging anybody. And then also there's a slight price increase from the previous presentation, only because, again, market availability that was out there. And these would be 2023 vehicles. And again, we are looking them to be outfitted completely and ready to be road ready as soon as they arrive. questions?
When would they arrive?
When they arrive, that's the question.
Do we have any idea?
No, not at this time. We don't have any at this time. We are working with a couple of our vendors right now, and they do have some of these vehicles currently in stock. But again, this is kind of one of the rushes that we're trying to make sure that we get this program or get a part of this program, get with Enterprise, extend the agreement with part of the master agreement and take advantage of the vehicles that they do have. So there's a possibility that we can get them within a few months.
So for the police cars, I remember you all had spoken about bulletproof windshield. Is that
Correct.
still?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay.
And they'll have all the lights, the radios, the computer equipment that they require.
Thank you.
When was the previous agreement? The one we had before?
2019.
That included the police?
No, sir, that was just the light fleet, the maintenance, public works, parks.
So this is the first time we're going to include police vehicles?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. All right, do we have?
I'll
any
make the
additional
motion
discussion?
to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Item number 2, consideration and action to approve change order 1 to the contract with Arriago Roofing and Construction LLC in the amount of $54,950, project number RCP-38-0422 as budgeted for the re-roof and replacement of rooftop HVAC systems of the Ringgold Civic Pavilion, internal services.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, again, this change order is for the re-roofing project over at the Ringgold Pavilion. It is change order number 1. It is to the contract, and it is requesting for an additional $54,950 for the demolition and installation of 4 new interior air handlers. When this project went out to bid, there was some miscommunication between the city and the architects and consulting engineers about the units. Since the city had already purchased the air handler units, they were under the impression that the inside units had already been replaced, and we were just going to be replacing the outside units. So that was not the case. So we're just going back in, received a quote from the contractor for just demolition and installation of the entire interior units. Now, as a part of this change order, they're also requesting an additional 14 days for this work specifically, but an additional 72 extra days for a total of 86 for rain days and wet days that were part of the project from July to November of this year.
So is this just missed by the architect and engineer?
Yes, sir. They were under the impression that for whatever reason, we had already replaced them. It was never communicated. It was just miscommunication on both ends. The good thing about it, or if anything, is that this was not paid for in the original contract. So this is not included in that.
Obviously not, it wasn't included. So, all right, but it just really kind of disconcerting when you have an architect and engineer whose purpose is to review plans and to have second and third checks on this, and yet it doesn't happen.
Absolutely, and I agree with you on that. We've had conversations with both of them already. And it's something that moving forward, we will continue to make sure with any architect or engineer moving forward that all aspects are covered.
Will it impact the Children's Museum at all in their operations?
No, ma'am, it won't. In fact, it's operational right now as the project is ongoing. And we will be working with them on shutting down certain units at certain times so it doesn't affect them.
All right, do we have any motions?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next, we have item number 3, consideration and action to acknowledge the finance director's financial statements and cash investment report for the city of Brownsville for the 4th quarter ended on September the 30th, 2022, Financial Services Department.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Commissioners. Lupe Arenal, Finance Director. Briefly go over the financials. Actually, I'll go a little bit in deeper, seeing this the end of the fiscal year. I want to elaborate a little bit on some of the items. This is the financial statements unaudited investment report for the quarter ending September 30th. It's not official until the audit's over, usually in the month of March. Some general highlights: general fund revenues and transfers out to other funds total $126.5 million. This is approximately about $11 million less than last year. The highlights on this one, there was the PUB transfer was less, obviously, because last year we had and windfall, $10 million for winter storm Uri. Grant funding, we had CARES funding that we don't longer carry this year, and transfers from general fund actually decreased. Second item is general fund expenditures transfer out, $125.5 million. This is approximately 10 million more than last year. Again, and I'll go over it a little bit more, but a few items, basically, immigrant influx, about $6 million, expenses we didn't have last year, we had this year. Again, it's 100% as of today covered by grant funding. Our contract commitments to our public service, fire and PD contract increases, and transfers out an amount of increases. Number three, sales tax revenues total $41.6 million. This is about 4.9 million more than last year, or 13.6% increase. Property tax collections, $53.3 million. This is approximately 1.8 million more than last year, 800,000 going to the general fund. Cash transfer of PUB, $11.9 million. This is a decrease from the $20.5 million, noting we had a one-time windfall from PUB of $10 million. General fund, landfill generated $16.7 million. Veterans Bridge, $3.2 million. This is an increase of about 16% or 456,000 compared to last fiscal year. Going a little bit detail in regards to the revenues on here, the bar graphs in front of you, the green is the budget, the blue is indicated actuals through fiscal year 21. The red bar graphs is actuals through September 30th. Again, total revenues decreased about $11.2 million, mainly on there. The $11.2 million comes basically as a net effect of a decrease from the PUB surplus, about $8.5 million. Intergovernmental decrease about $6 million. $8.5 million came from the CARES funds that we're not going to recognize this year. $4.4 million transfers from other funds that we have yet to recognize. We did have incremental increases in the property taxes, about 800,000, 5 million in sales taxes, fines and forfeiture, 200,000, license and permits, 300,000, fees and services, 800,000, and utilities increase about $800,000. Net decrease about $11.2 million. Sales tax highlights. On the left-hand side, you have sales tax revenue for $41.6 million. Sales tax increase 4.9 million, or 13% increase from fiscal year 21. On the right-hand side, we have a rolling 12-month sales tax collection. This takes the last 12 months and gives you a rolling projection as far as increases. As you'll see, one of the two corrections I want to make on the bullet points on the right-hand side, on the months. On the first one says month of August experienced the greatest. Actually, it's the month of November increased the highest percentage increase, which was 32%. The second bullet point there is also need to increase. Instead of being July of 22, it would be March of 22, had the lowest increase of 4.22%. One of the items in here to note is even though over the whole 12-month period, we had a 14% increase, if you note the last 7 months, those increases have not been that significant. So one of the items is we got to watch these as we go month to month. Average for the last 7 months decreased to $8.5 million. So that's something conservatively during the budget process, we conservatively budget 2%. Anything above 2% is good. So, I think we'll still be healthy. It won't be as low as 2%, but it's something that I don't think we're going to be getting the 14% increase as we did this year. This one just highlights the budget to actuals. Well, as far as budget-wise, we were over $5.9 million over our budget projections. This is property tax allocations. The red section on there is debt service fund. The blue section is general fund collections. 63% gets collected by general fund, or $34.4 million. Debt service, $19.8 million. Property tax collections by month. always, first 3 months are always the heaviest tax collections that we get. The total levy for fiscal year 22 was $54 million. We collected about 97.3 of the current tax levy, which is real good. And the total collections from prior year's collections was $1.6 million. Utilities and cash transfers. This is, on the left-hand side, you'll see the utilities actual expenses went up. Like most of city population, the city's also, utility costs went up from $4.5 million to $5.3 million, or about 70% more in utility expenses. On the right-hand side, you'll see last year we had $20.5 million. We actually decreased it to 11.9. Actually, the transfer was 11.9, noting again $10 million windfall on Hurricane Uri transfer from from the PUB. Other revenue sources on here, again, prior years, it's in teal and orange is the actual year to date. On the intergovernmental, these are basically grants. Again, we had about $8.5 million in CARES fundings that we're not recognizing. That's for the decrease. Fees and services, $832,000 attributed to ambulance and fire services, minor increases to library, vital stats, and youth programs. Fines and forfeitures, municipal court, basically $255,000 over last year's amount. And interest earnings, $241,000 compared, increase over fiscal year 21. This next section is the actual expenditures. These are by function. Again, the budget was $138 million. The actual expenditures are $125 million. The actual expenses were over last year, about $10.8 million. And highlights on that one is, again, we have immigrant influx, $6 million. That's covered by the grant. We had about 1.8 contract commitments with our public safety contracts and some influx expenses, $2.4 million increases in the general fund transfer out, and then about $500,000 in utility increase costs.
That is, oh, sorry, oh, for Public Works, is that did not include like CDBG funds and those things?
No, CDBG is a different, it's on a different.
How much more? Because then I'm concerned, is less money allocated to Public Works than Culture and Recreation? Or I'm just curious. Like if you were to add on CDBG money and all those other government monies that are applied towards Public Works.
CDBG monies. So the CDBG amount that I have here is it's about $4 million, but not all of it is allocated to Public Works. So
Correct.
we would have to
That's true.
portion that out to give you that information.
Okay, thanks.
Going back to this very summary fund balance, we began the year $60.8 million of fund balance. The fund balance has two major items, those funds that are pretty much restricted and unassigned fund balance. And I'll go over that a little bit more. Total revenues, you subtract the expenditures, actually increased about $1.1 million. Out of the $61.9 million, about $10.4 million restricted. Basically, those are funds that are not controlled by the city, and so it's grants, commitments, others that we can budget for. The $51.5 million, that's what we actually have to work with. The two bullet points that you have here is $16.8 million. Out of the $51.5 million, $16.8 million was earmarked out of surpluses. That's already commitment. Taking that out of the equation gives you a remainder of $34.7 million of unassigned fund balance or reserved of 101 days. This exceeds our unassigned fund balance. I want to touch a little bit more on this $16.8 million. This is a combination of two major funding sources, the PUB windfall of $10 million and $6.8 million of sales tax. These are our commitments. These are on the works that we have going. Again, what makes up the $16.8 million? Capital outlay, we funded 2 years of capital outlay of $1.6 million. The fleet replacement program, $500,000 of the previously motor patrol vehicles on there. Heavy equipment is one of the biggest items that we don't have a fleet replacement program, but we need to fund it because it's very needed, mainly for our public works, about $4.1 million. Infrastructure, $7 million that we have on this. This includes internal services, fleet facilities, bus shelters, increase to traffic synchronization, technology replacement program, about $1 million, excuse me. Fair Streets, we added $1 more million to the street maintenance fund so that we could continue with the blacktop replacement program. And we have special projects that come from the 380 agreement, runway rehab, Games of Texas, and historic historic preservation redevelopment program. That totals about $16.8 million. Just to kind of put it, $16.8 million in context. This is the summary of all the other funds, and on this one is basically you have in orange all your special revenue funds on the left-hand side. In purple, you have your debt service funds, where they're non-bonded, bonded, and then your enterprise funds, or we refer to the enterprise funds at the bottom. In summary, what we want to do is on the far right hand, the ending fund balance, we want to make sure that's in positive. One of the items on here is the community development. It's in negative because basically we just need to recognize grant revenues are yet to be coming in, but that should be at zero. Employee benefit fund this year, pretty much balanced out. We had funding contributions of $14.8 million. This comes $11.7 million coming from the city contributions, $2 million coming from employees, retiree contributions, rebates that we get for stop loss items of that sort of about $1 million. Medical expenses and the different types of medical expenses are listed on the pie graph. Total expenditures of $14.6 million. Actually, our fund balance or net position on that grew about $200,000 to $3.2 million. Economic indicators. These are kind of big items that we kind of look at. The Veterans Bridge, unemployment rate, and building permits. These are kind of indicators what's going to be happening, generally happening. On the Veterans Bridge, on the far right-hand corners, the blue bar graphs on there, basically this is just all the bridge crossings. Fiscal year 21, it kind of reduced. The bridge was closed because of the last 2 years. Reopening of the bridge, we saw a traffic increase of about 1.8 million increases, or 32%, excuse me, compared to last fiscal year. Border crossings on the bottom right-hand corner, it's broken down by automotive, the first section there, commercial vehicle, and miscellaneous items on there. I mean, basically bikes, pedestrians. Again, the one that's more active is the auto and motor vehicle that increased on there. On the left-hand side, what you see there is the actual revenues collected to date by fiscal year. And then the yellow line that's across there is the budget, indicates the budget that we anticipated. For fiscal year 22, we budgeted $2.4 million. We actually got $3.2 million. So those are little trends that we kind of put out. Building permits. It was a very good year for building permits. On the far right-hand side, the building valuation, not assessments, but just the valuations that we put once we give the building permits, went from $184 million to $438 million in valuation, which is quite significant. The breakdown between residential, $284 million, and commercial, $154 million, which is quite good. Again, the assessments will be assessed next year. Property taxes should increase based on that. The last one in here is the unemployment rate trending, rates going down. One of the items I need to correct is unemployment rate. The footnote that's there was 4%. Actually, that's for the state. For the city, it's actually 5.9%. That's something I need to update on that. The last time that we actually were 5.9% was in February 2020. That's the last time we're in those low historic rates, unemployment rates. Last portion, the investment report. Top portion gives you the allowable investment types that we could have: interest earning, certificate deposit, public pools, bonds. The investment portfolio, the way we have it right now is about 74% is invested in public pools, 25% invested in interest-bearing accounts. There's two items on here: weighted average day of maturity, 23 days. Their investment policy allows 270 days. The average yield that we're getting is 2.41%. We usually compare it to a 3-month T-bill. Again, the T-bill has been incrementally increasing. We're trying to catch up with it. Eventually we will, but we're at 3.22%. Questions?
All right, do we have a motion to acknowledge?
Motion to acknowledge?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thanks.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 4, consideration and action to approve resolution number 2022-093, reorganizing the LGBTQ task force of the city of Brownsville, expanding the task assigned to include implementing strategies for improving awareness, advocacy, inclusivity, and cultural competence on LGBTQ issues in the community, and prioritizing initiatives to improve the Human Rights Campaign Municipal Equality Index score of the city of Brownsville.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Commissioners. Tonight, this item is for your consideration and action. This is being requested by the LGBTQ+ Task Force, and tonight we have Brian Martinez, the chair for the task force. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. The LGBTQ+ Task Force was created in December of 2019, and for the past 3 years, we've come before you every year to give an annual report in terms of our efforts and everything that we've done during the years. With all of our efforts, we have made Brownsville an example for other municipalities in South Texas who has also reached out to us to follow footstep in what we are doing here within our community to be able to promote inclusivity and equality for all of our citizens, residents, and other people who come through our boundaries. So today we have a resolution which is reiterating our purpose as a task force, and what it does is it's going to give us a new purpose to work towards the MEI, the Municipality Equality Index. In doing so, we are increasing positive growth and attraction for the city of Brownsville. So today we are presenting, if you can go to the next slide, please. There we go. We went ahead and listed out the resolution for you in bullet points. This gives us a little bit more structure. When we were first created, we were created as an item. And now creating a resolution gives a little bit more structure as a task force to be able to work with the organization and work hand in hand with the city manager's office to put forth any efforts that we're doing. Do we have any questions?
No, so this formalizes it a little bit more than,
Correct.
okay, what about making it, is there any steps above this, making it like a committee or anything like that? Because typically task forces are organized for a limited purpose or a specific amount of time. But if this is something we want to continue to do, is this the best approach or is there something more formal? You know?
The task force has discussed about staying as a task force or creating an official board. As a task force, we do have the flexibility to do a lot within the scope of work that we are doing. And we decided to continue doing that with a resolution in place to kind of write out what our purpose is as well.
Okay. All right. Do we have any questions?
I just had a quick question. I'm not against it or anything. I just, for clarification, I remember that the task force was created so that we could work on a specific ordinance to make an inclusive atmosphere and just be more welcoming as a city as a whole. What would the purpose be of having an actual board? Like, what would this board oversee full-time?
Well, with the Fair Practices Ordinance now in effect, there is how is the procedural method for reports to be submitted and how it's going to go into effect with the city. So we are going to continue to explore ways to make the city accessible, if you will, in terms of discrimination and harassment that happens within the community. They can reach out and there's more of a procedural thing in place.
Yeah, so really, the task at this point is to improve the MEI, right? Because I know we've been improving on that score, but we want to get higher on that score, obviously. So then you're going to be looking at how we can actually get that score up as a task force, right?
Yes, there is a specific method to submit the items on the MEI, and we're working hand in hand with the city manager's office to reach out to Human Rights Campaign so we can make sure that all of those scores are taken into consideration. They did release this year's score, and there was not much change because what we did was after the consideration deadline that they had. So we will expect a big increase in the MEI score this coming year.
And they'll move also from just exploring strategies to now working with the city manager's office to implement strategies.
And I may add as well, with this resolution, it would, and have the commission reappoint the members to the new revised commission, task force, which would be in January.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second,
We
second.
have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 5, consideration and action to accept the city attorney's resignation effective December 29, 2022, and to authorize the mayor to create a city attorney selection subcommittee.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory, so.
I'll move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a
Second?
motion and a second? Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Next, we
Appoint that
have-
today, or
You need an appointment at this point?
it authorizes the mayor to appoint the committee?
Right, it authorizes me to appoint. So do I have to do an open session? Because I'm not ready to appoint the.
No, you
external
don't have to
member.
do an open session.
Okay. Thanks.
Next, we have board appointments. Number 1, consideration action on resolution number 2022-088 to appoint or reappoint 4 board members to the Brownsville Border Film Commission.
Good evening, Mayor and City Commission. We have 4 vacancies for the Brownsville Border Film Commission. Currently, we have Ms. Rosie Williams, Celia Galindo, and Jesus Trevino serving on the commission. And here are our applicants.
I'll make a motion to appoint David Armidas.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes.
Who else needs an appointment?
It's Nurith, Jessica, and Pedro have the next 3 picks.
I'm sorry, what?
You, Nurith, and Pedro
We need
have the
to
remaining
appoint
3
somebody?
picks.
I thought it was John. It's not these people here?
So these are the ones who just appointed. So Commissioner Galansky, you have an appointment, Commissioner Tetro, and then Commissioner Cardenas.
Go to the.
Applicants?
I'll appoint Daniel Elkin.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. It was Daniel Elkin.
Mhm.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes.
I'll appoint Priscilla Orta.
Second.
Sorry, can you say it again?
I move to appoint Priscilla Orta.
Okay, we have a motion for Priscilla Orta.
There was a
and-
second
And
by
there was a
Commissioner
second.
Galansky.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
I will wait.
Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank y'all.
thanks.
Board appointment number 2, consideration action on resolution number 2022-075 to appoint or reappoint members to the Brownsville Community Improvement Corporation.
Good evening.
So we have three, I shouldn't say vacancies, but we have three board members at the end of their first term who are eligible for reappointment for a second term. That is Jill Dominguez, Mark Horowitz, and Zoraima Diaz. So I kindly request for consideration to reappoint all three of them back to our board to serve a second term.
Okay, just really quick, Corey, if I can, on the three that are coming up for reappointment, do we have attendance? Is there any issues with attendance for many of these?
No issue on attendance. They all have had pretty much 90% to 100% attendance.
Great.
I'd like a motion to reappoint Mark Horowitz.
We have
Second.
we have a motion and a second for Mark Horowitz. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
Move to reappoint Jill Dominguez.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for Jill Dominguez. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
And I'll move to appoint Zoraima Diaz.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to reappoint Zoraima Diaz. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next, we have consideration and action on resolution number 2022-084 to appoint or reappoint to the Brownsville Public Library System Advisory Board.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Brenda Trevino, Head Library Branch Manager. The Library Board currently has 3 positions that are opening up. 2 of them are due to their terms expiring, and 1 is due to a resignation, and they're highlighted there on the slide. The next one, we do have applicants, and just for your information, Ms. Sosa is a previous board member. Ms. Gonzalez is actually finishing up her term and is our current chair. Ms. Peña is a previous task force member, and Mr. Pequeño is also a previous board member, but per his application, he also does serve in 2 other committees.
You're looking for 3 appointments, correct?
Yes, 3
Okay.
appointments.
Can you go back? Because commissioners always like to know who's up. All right. So then these
Oh.
3, did they resign?
Yeah, the highlighted ones would be the ones that are going out.
Okay. All right. So Commissioner Galansky, Commissioner Tetro, and Commissioner Gowan.
And what are the applicants are? Oh, thank you. And you said that Mr. Pequeño serves on other boards already, is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
And my appointment, what was her reason for not reapplying?
She didn't say.
Oh, okay. I'll move to appoint Ruby Gonzalez in the District 2 spot.
We have a motion to appoint Ruby Gonzalez. Is there a second? Motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes.
And does Ms. Ayala want to be reappointed, or do you not know?
She decided not to go ahead and apply it at this time.
Okay, so then I would make a motion to appoint Bertha Peña.
We have a motion
Second.
for Berta Peña and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
So Ruby's up, right? And is she willing to serve again?
I appointed her.
Okay, good. Thank you. Oh, instead of Ms. Knopf?
They said that Ms. Knopf did not want to continue.
Okay. Who are the other options? Sorry, or? Oh. Sorry,
Yeah.
let's see.
No, they moved it. Go back to the
applicants.
slide of applicants. There you go.
She applied
No,
again.
I'll appoint Juliana Sosa.
Okay, we have a motion and a motion for Juliana Sosa. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thanks.
Thank you.
Item number 4, consideration action on resolution number 2022-089 to appoint 2 members to the Brownsville Convention and Visitors Bureau Advisory Board.
Good evening, Mayor and City Commission. As y'all might recall, the Brownsville Convention and Visitors Bureau Advisory Board has a unique makeup of 11 members. And so we are here seeking appointment for 2 board members. The other positions are peer appointed by the board. And here's the makeup that we have currently. As requested by, from what we've heard, we are currently exploring amending the bylaws to reflect similar board makeups as other board and commissions for the city. We are getting that done with the assistance of the Texas Association of CVBs. But as mentioned, we are seeking 2 board appointments from the city commission, and these are our applicants.
I'll move to appoint Maribel Baca.
We have a motion to appoint Maribel Baca. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
Whose appointment is next?
It's open. There's no,
The commission doesn't have 7.
I'll move to appoint Erica Magallanes.
we have a motion to appoint Erica Magallanes. Is there a second?
There was a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
It is now 6:24. Executive session number 1, closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.071, consultation with attorney, and Section 551.072, real property, related to the potential exchange, lease, valuation, sale, or purchase of real property regarding project historical preservation. Number 2, closed session pursuant to the Texas Government Code Sections 551.071, consultation with attorney, including contemplated and/or pending litigation related to Environmental Industrial Services Group, Inc., Cartograph, and Jessica Crafts. Number 3, closed session pursuant to the Texas Government Code Sections 551.071, consultation with attorney related to the legal issues regarding the Tenasca audit conducted by Carr Riggs and Ingram. Number 4, closed session pursuant to the Texas Government Code Sections 551.074, personnel deliberation related to the potential appointment of an interim city attorney.
We have a motion to go into executive session.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Executive session.
It is now 7:21 to convene executive session. After executive session, possible action on any items as discussed in executive session. Item number 1, in accordance with the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, the City Commission will reconvene into a regular session to consider action, if any, on matters discussed in executive session.
Do you have any motions?
Want to go in order?
Yep.
Of the agenda? Looks like the first one that's an action item is number 2, Jessica Crafts. I'll move to proceed as discussed in executive session.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
CRI.
Were the other two items requiring action?
Cartograph was an action item.
It is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we need cartograph as well. Roy?
Which agenda item is that?
Two. You had three
Okay,
items.
very good. I see. For the second item, I will move to proceed as discussed in executive session with regard to cartograph.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
And I'll make a motion to appoint Will Trevino as interim city attorney.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
I'll move to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Stand adjourned. Thank you.
It is now 7:23, the end of City Commission meeting.